Cool. All right, guys. My name is Brian Lagunas, and I came all the way from Boise, Idaho. Who knows where Boise, Idaho is? You know where Boise is?
It's in Idaho.
It is in Idaho. So Idaho is on the west coast. People know where California is. It's one of our neighbors. We actually have 6 neighbors plus Canada, so we're actually a pretty big state, but we only have 1 million people in the entire state. But I like it. It's small. It's a little big city, right? And today I'm here to talk to you about building cross-platform games with Unity. Now this is an intro talk. This is basically, you've never even thought about building games, or you're interested and you've never cracked open Unity. So that's the target for this talk. Should be fun. We're going to actually build a game from scratch to see how easy it is. And normally I don't say this because I don't want people to feel bad, but my 6-year-old daughter uses this to build games. So just so you know, it's not that hard, right? I'm a product manager for a company called Infragistics. Anyone ever heard of Infragistics? We actually used to have a little office here, but we shut it down for some reason. Probably too expensive. Food here is crazy expensive, guys. Jeez. But I manage all these YAML products, WPF, what used to be Silverlight, UWP, Xamarin Forms, Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, native iOS. So I'm responsible for all that stuff. If you guys want to contact me, blagunas@infragistics.com. Hit me up on my blog. And then Twitter @BrianLagunas, so you can tweet how awesome this session is, right? And if it sucks, just my name's @ScottHanselman. So, so you just put that in there. This sucks, Hanselman, right? I'm also the owner and manager of the Prism project. You guys ever heard of Prism? So that's my baby. And actually, Xamarin Forms 2.3.1 just went stable. So I'm going to release a new stable version of Prism probably tonight. All right, so enough about that. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about all this stuff. We're going to talk about what Unity is. We're going to go over the IDE. We're going to create a scene, make a terrain, and then we're going to do some scripting, and we're going to have a fully functional game at the end of this, right from scratch, file new, my favorite. And then we'll deploy, if we have time, which I'm sure we will. So you're like, hey, what's Unity? Oh, I know what Unity is. It's that dependency injection container. I use it all the time with Prism. It's so awesome. No, that's not it. This is a different Unity. This is Unity 3D, right? So this is a IDE for building 2D and 3D games. Okay, it's an editor and a player, which means not only do you create the game inside of this editor, but you can actually play it as you create it, which is really cool. And it's multi-platform. So no matter what platform you want to hit, you can target it. Windows Phone, Windows Phone, anybody? Really? Wow, I'm surprised. Xbox, PlayStation, BlackBerry? Oh, okay, I didn't think about BlackBerry. You get the idea, iOS, Android. Basically, the idea is you write once, and then you just kind of change your target, make some modifications for the device, and deploy again. It's a beautiful thing. So some really popular games that have been built with Unity, Call of Duty Strike Team, Driftmania, Temple Run. Everyone knows Temple Run, right? No? Who doesn't know Temple Run? If you got kids, you know this game. Subway Surfers, another one. If you have kids, you know that game, right? So Unity is not just like this hobbyist type thing. I mean, big companies use Unity to build real deal games, okay, that they actually charge a lot of money for. Okay, so we're going to get out of slides, and essentially, like I said, we're going to go file new, and we're going to create a game from scratch. All right, we're done with slides for the day. All right, so the first thing you need to know is where to get Unity. You need to go to unity3d.com, okay? Then just click on the Get Unity link, right, top right corner. And there's this cool little free version called Personal. Download that one. It's free. It's beautiful. And you can do everything you want, just about. Everything you need to do for your games. Okay, so once you have Unity, it's going to install it. You're going to have a nice little icon up here. Just double-click that, and it's going to launch Unity. And you get this little dialog that says, hey, what kind of project do you want to do? Do you want to open an existing one, or let's go ahead and create a new one? So we'll create a new one, and we'll call this NDC SID. Okay, now as you can see, I can choose from a 2D game or a 3D game. I'm going to pick 3D because I think that's cooler, right? And then we don't care about adding asset packages now. And actually, when you create games, you won't even add these now. And then I don't care about analytics in this demo. So we'll go ahead and create the project. And this is actually relatively quick. Now, I will warn you, I just downloaded the brand new version last night, right, from the website. So we'll see if they changed anything. I did that one time, and they made a breaking change. They had a bug, and it was fun doing real-time debugging. OK, so this is Unity. This is your IDE. It's actually built on top of Mono Develop. So as you create your game, you're actually building on top of Mono, just so you know. OK, you have a couple of panes by default. There's more to it, but we're going to keep it simple today. We have our scene view. Now, your scene view, this is three-dimensional space. This is where you're going to be interacting with your objects. OK? So for example, if I wanted to add a cube into here, here's our cube. Right? Now, we're in 3D space, so we have three axes, x, y, and great. Z is our depth. So that means we have these cool little tools we can use to manipulate these objects in this three-dimensional space. We can rotate, right? We can scale, different ways of scaling. And of course, we have other cool tools for scaling and moving things around. Now, I will say you have to be careful when you're dragging things around in this space, because you're in three-dimensional space, and this can play tricks on your eyes. So you think you're like center screen, but you're like 600,000 kilometers below your view, right? It gets crazy. Now, this here is your hierarchy. This represents all the objects in your scene, OK? Over here, we have your inspector. Now, your inspector is essentially a property you get in Visual Studio. You select the object, and then all the properties and values you can manipulate show up in the inspector. Now, I want to make a note here. Everything in here is essentially a script, also referred to as a component. But it's really just a script behind the scenes. And we're going to create our own later on. Then you have your project pane. This is all the assets and all the files and everything that makes up your game as it exists on disk. OK, so if I were to come in here and create a new folder, say scenes, and let's go ahead and save this scene as like main scene. We'll stick it in that folder. Now, I will right-click, show and explore. That is my main scene I just created. So everything that exists here will be on your hard drive. Okay? And then we have this game view. The game view, this is where you actually manipulate and play your game. Right? So you do all this manipulation up here, blah, blah, build my game. I hit play, and this becomes active. And now you see your play. You play the game with the keyboard or mouse or whatever, real time, right here. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick, a little tip I learned the hard way. So let's say I hit play. Now, of course, all we have is a cube. It doesn't do anything. So let me just rotate this right quick. OK, so let's say I'm in play mode. And then, it's like, OK, I got to make some changes. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make some changes, do some cool things. Right, whatever. We'll rotate this one. Let's say we spend an hour or two just playing with stuff, got my game right where I want it, and I notice, oh, man, I'm in play mode. Let me stop this. No! Oh, man. I just lost like 2 hours of work because I didn't realize I was in play mode. When you are in play mode, anything you do is basically temporary. And the second you exit play mode, lost. Okay? So the first thing you do when you install Unity, make a note of this. You want to go to Edit, Preferences, Colors, and you see this play mode tint? Change that to like an ugly, ugly color, like red. Now, I know I'm in play mode, and any change I make will be lost. OK, so do that, because you do not want to go through what I went through when I first did that. OK. Any questions so far? No? All right, so let's start building a game. I thought we would create this little island. We'll throw some treasure chests on it, and we'll go look for them, dig them up, collect the treasure, get points, and win the game. So in order to do that, we need to build a terrain. Okay, now I want to step back just a little bit. And you remember when I saved this scene? I called it main scene. A scene is essentially a level. Think of a scene as a level. So we're dealing with a level, and we just named it main scene. So I'm going to build level 1, if you will. Okay, so I can go into this create menu, and I'm going to create some 3D objects. And right down here, we have a terrain object. So I'm just going to select terrain. And I know it doesn't look big, but this thing is massive. It just added a very massive terrain object into my scene. Okay, so we're going to leave it right where it's at. It's positioned 0, 0, 0, exactly where we want it, center of our world. Okay, now I'm going to start manipulating this terrain. I want to add mountains and trees and grass and water. So the first thing I'm going to start is with my mountains. What I want to do is I have a nice little terrain menu set here where I can do things to this terrain. Like I can, raise up my terrain, mountains. I can paint it, trees, grass, right? We can do all this cool stuff. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the terrain. I can pick my brush, set different settings, but we'll just keep everything default for now. And we'll just come in here and do paint, 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 right there. Make a little cove, right? So I'm just going to paint some mountains back here. Nothing too fancy. All right, so we have some mountains. Cool. But they're kind of ugly, right? They're real ugly. They're gray. What we want to do is we want to add a texture to these. Okay, we want them to look like something. So in order to do that, we need to have what's called an asset, right? Now, an asset, essentially, it could be a model. It could be a texture like we're about to do. It could be a script. It could be anything. What we want is textures. So where do we get these assets? Well, there's a couple ways to do it. The easiest way and the fastest is to actually go to unity3d.com and go to the asset store, right here, top right-hand corner. There are so many free, or pay if you want to pay, but there's tons of free assets that you can download and bring right into your game. So for example, if you want a zombie, just search for zombie. I want free, right? And then here's a zombie character. I can click on that, bring it into my game, and use it free of charge. And as you can see, we have models, scripts, particle systems, textures, you name it, you can get it. Now, always go to the website because although if you go to window, there's an asset store window, this is so slow and frustrating, don't even bother. Don't even bother coming here. Just go to the website, it's so much easier. So along those lines, another thing I want to mention is that Unity is not meant to build assets. Okay, you're not building 3D models in this. You're consuming 3D models. If you want to build a model, you'll use something like Blender, Maya, 3D Studio Max. Maya and 3D Studio Max are really expensive. Even if you have a student discount, I think it's like a couple grand. But Blender's free. The UI sucks, but it's free. And you can build whatever you want. There's lots of free models out there. But essentially, you build your models in another program, and then you bring them in to Unity and compose your game from those objects. Okay? Now, Unity ships with some built-in asset packages. And I'm going to bring in the environment package, because that's where like trees and grass, and we have some textures that exist already. So you can come in here and take everything, but we probably don't want to do that. We'll just take the environment section and import. And then this one's pretty small, so it should come in relatively quickly. OK, that's pretty slow, actually. Actually, I'm kind of running low on RAM, too, and space. I got so much stuff on this computer. It's time for the 6-month Windows wipe. We all have to do that, right, every 6 months. Time to wipe Windows, reload. Wow, that's really slow. Any questions so far? Yeah, if you go in there, if you go to the store, some of them actually have the licenses. Unity3d.com. Let's just find one right quick. We'll go back to our zombie. Let's just click on him. It's free. Model, textures. We can scroll down here, see if he includes any type of licensing information. I don't see anything that stands out at me on this one. Publisher's website. If there's a license, normally it's included in the package. We can look down here and see if they noted it. Yep, no license required on this one. All right, so we've downloaded our assets. Here we go, environment, perfect. Now what we want to do is we're going to paint this mountain range. So I'm going to come to this paintbrush. I'm going to edit textures and add a new texture. And I really hate this user interface because it really makes no sense sometimes. Then I'm going to select a texture. How about this one? Add it. Boom. OK. It's not that great, right? But it's something. So we'll go ahead and zoom on in. And we can see that we have sand. Well, sand's cool and all, but those really aren't mountains. What I'd really like to have is some like a rocky texture on the mountain. So let's add another texture. This one looks good. Make sure you select it right there. And then you can just paint right on the mountains. And if you can tell, I make noises when I paint, and when I create things, I'm just like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, right? All right, so I know this looks like crap, but if you zoom in, there we go, you can start to see that the texture starts to come through, okay? So Unity, the IDE, does some tricks to keep your IDE responsive. As you zoom out, it shows way less detail. Otherwise, if it's showing a lot of detail all the time, your system's just going to come to a halt, or you'll need just this massive mainframe type computer to run it. So as you zoom out, you'll lose detail. As you zoom in, you'll get more detail. Keep that in mind, because we're going to show you another gotcha later. OK, so we've painted our mountain range. How about we add some trees? So I'm going to go ahead and click the little tree button. Edit trees, add one. And this is another weird thing. It's like, oh, well, I got to assign a tree. So how about this palm tree? That looks good. All right, so now let's bring the brush size down a little bit. Pow, pow, pow. We got trees, right? Let's zoom in on them. Whoops, too far. Beautiful. OK, we got some palm trees, got some sand, mountain range. Let's add some grass, right? So I'm going to click this thing that looks like flowers. Edit, add grass texture. Now, all these textures that I'm using, they came from the environment package we imported. Let's just pick something down here. This one will work. OK. So now I'm going to paint some grass. Paint, 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 paint. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, hold on. I think it's broken. Rage paint. OK, something's not working. Let me see what's going on. Oh, my God, look at all that grass I just threw in my view. Right? Remember that thing I was telling you about detail, and when you're zoomed out, you don't get a lot of detail. But as you zoom in, you'll show you the detail. So when you're zoomed way out, and you're like, man, I just want all this grass. Oh, it's not working. And you rage paint. Yeah, don't do that. I did that, and like my entire scene just had grass all over it because I didn't realize when I was getting started about the little trick. So be very careful when you start doing finer detailed paintings or grass or creating objects in your games, because as you can see, there's no grass. You zoom in, there's a lot of grass because I rage painted. But there is Control-Z, so you can just undo that if you want. Boop, 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 boop. See, undone. We'll just put a little patch here and a little patch there and one right there. Looks good. OK, next, we need water, because I want an oasis. So luckily, in our environment package, we got water too. So I'm going to go ahead and select this water basic daylight. Now, I want to make a note. Your first instinct is when you get this model, you want to drag it and drop it right into your scene like that. don't get into that habit. While it might work sometimes, most of the time it won't. Because while you think you're dropping it flat, you're actually dropping it either 600,000 kilometers above it or below it. And you won't know it until you start zooming in. It's like, where's my water? Where's my object? So what I like to do is I'll drag it right into the hierarchy. That will put it right there, 0, 0, 0. And then I can just drag it where I want it. And see, even then, I didn't drag right, so it like drug it way down. I'm not even level anymore. I'm minus 104 meters. You see that? Okay, I got to get it right on the green. There we go. It's a little small, so let's go ahead and scale it up. Not rotate, scale. I'm going to do this. Now, right now, our water is perfectly on 0. So it's basically running into our ground. As you can see, it's like just kind of weird, it's intersecting, right? So what we'll want to do is we'll want to bring that up on the Y just a hair, just to like a 0.1, just to raise it up just a tad so we can see it. All right. Now I know what you're thinking, like, wow, we're doing all this designing up here, but what the heck's going on here? This is our game view. This is what we're supposed to see when we play our game. Well, when I created this scene, this camera was added by default. We just never took the time to come in here and move it. So let's go ahead and grab the camera, right? And we'll just move it. We've got to turn it. You see that little cone around the camera, this little outline? That shows your field of view on the camera. So we'll go ahead and move this around, move it up. All right, doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to not use this in a minute anyways. OK, great. So, and of course, if I play this, nothing's really going to happen. And right now it's hard to see, but the water is moving, the grass is moving, right? You get all that for free from Unity. But let's make this cooler. All right, so I think we're good on the level. I'm going to call that good for now. Now what we need is we need that person running around, exploring, finding treasure chests. So we need a first-person character. Well, great. Well, I can create one myself, get one from the asset store, or I can just use the characters package that comes with Unity. And we'll just import everything, because I don't want to go through and select. So like I said, Unity ships with a default characters package, comes with like a first person, a third person. We're going to use the first person. You can go to the asset store, get characters, doesn't matter. Totally up to you, build your own. Wouldn't recommend that because there's a lot that goes into it, because you got to worry about jumping and firing and going left, going right. You have to script all the movement. And these ship with all the scripts necessary for that. All right, so let's go into characters, first person, and we'll go with this FPS controller. We'll do that one. All right, automatically, my camera changed again. Well, this first person has its own camera on it. So now we're going to drag this first person around. We'll stick him in the water, or her, right? And we'll rotate around, and we'll bring it up just a tad. Now that'll work. And that means I can delete this other camera because we don't need it anymore. All right, so now I'm going to play the game. Oh, mouse works, right? I can jump. I got footsteps. I'm running. I'm in this beautiful grass. It's just flowing in the wind. Check out this water. And this is the basic water. There's more, there's better quality water as well that just looks super real. All right, that's cool, right? We don't have to code anything. We're just kind of clicking and dragging around, right? No code yet, but we have a first person exploring a level that we created, and we didn't have to write any code for it. All right. But right now it's kind of boring. When I play a first person game, I like that music that motivates you, gets you wanting to go look for stuff. So I have a sound package that I'm going to bring in. And we're going to add some sound, some music to our scene here. All right, let's go sounds. Let's see, let's listen to these. Nah, that's not very motivating. But this one. Nah, it's not that good either. That's not bad. There you go. Oh, yeah, nod in the head. We got it. That's the one. That's the one. We'll use that one. All right. So I'm going to come over to my first-person character. I'm going to add a component, which I said is just a script. We'll call it an audio source right down here. And then we have this little clip, audio clip. We're just going to click and drag that onto the audio clip and loop it. Now we play our game. All right, I'm motivated. Let's go find some treasure. Oh, ran into a tree. So you notice that the trees have collision detection built right into them. We collide with them. Can I climb this mountain, or is it too steep? A little steep. Let me jump. Cool. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, so doing underwater, you'll do some special tricks, but it's not hard. So when you're building a game, you got to kind of think outside the box. You'll have your top level water that's highly reflective and looks really cool, right? But then you'll build another element that represents your underwater. Maybe it's just kind of hazy and foggy, and you have bubbles floating through it or something like that, right? But you build everything. All right, let's see. So we got our character, we got some sound, we need some treasure. And I got just the object. Got a little treasure box. Bring that in. All right, so let's go ahead and drag my treasure box up to my hierarchy. And we'll bring it in right there. Okay, another trick. This is a very simple scene, but when you get a lot of objects in here, you're going to want to be able to find that. And it may be small, like tiny, tiny small. So the best way to do that is in your hierarchy, select the object, move your mouse over your scene, and hit the F button. And it will zoom in on that object. Okay, that's the easiest way to find something. All right, so we have our treasure box. So I dropped it in there. So I should just be able to just play the game and run right into it, right? And just go. Oh, that's no fun. All right, we don't get any more freebies. Okay, we actually got to write a little bit of code now. But it's not complicated at all. So the first thing we need to do is we need to write a script. But before we get that, we have to talk about exactly how this is going to work. Because we've got to start solving problems in Unity now. Game problems, which are going to be different than if you were building a line of business application, right? So we've got to start thinking, OK, what's got to happen? What's got to happen is when I run into this box, it's got to disappear, and I got to get points for it. So let's start with the first problem, running into the box. How do I know when I run into the box so I can execute code? Well, in Unity, we have this thing called a collider. And we happen to have a couple different shapes, and one of those shapes is a box collider, right? In the box collider, if I zoom in, you can see this little green outline. That's my collider that I just added to this box. Now, if you have a different shaped object, just pick the shape that's closest to your object and then manipulate the collider to fit as best as you can. Now, so we have a collider, but that just means I'm going to run into it. Well, I don't want to just run into it. I need a notification. I need to know when I run into it. So there's a little checkbox here for is trigger. Make sure you click is trigger. When that happens, we will be notified. Our script can respond to that. Oop, I ran into something. Let's run some code. OK, great. So let's go ahead and start doing some coding. Now, I'm a little ADD, so I got to, well, OCD, I got to put a scripts folder in here. Now, you can create your scripts a couple different ways. C#, so where's my C# devs? Okay, and JavaScript? Okay, well, I'm C#, so we'll do C#. But if you're more comfortable with JavaScript, you can write them in JavaScript, no problem. All right, so we'll call this chest pickup. And then I'm just going to open this up. And as you can see, it's going to use Visual Studio as my editor. So we get debugging and all that great stuff. We can hit breakpoints, debug our game. It's a beautiful thing. OK, so scripts will derive from what's called a mono behavior. And it's going to stub out two methods for you, start and update. Start, think of it as almost like a constructor. It's going to execute once when the object is created. OK? So you're going to put your setup code in there. And then update is going to be called every time, every frame. Okay, so if you're running 30 frames per second, that code is being called 30 times a second. So don't be connecting to databases and doing crazy stuff in there. Okay, I've seen it. Oh, I have performance problems in my game. What's going on? Yeah, well, the opening and closing connections in an update. So we won't be using that. Now, you remember we added that is trigger check? Well, I know, because I read the docs, that in order to respond to that, I need to add a method called ontriggerenter in collider. And it takes a collider. OK. I'm going to show you somewhere you're going to spend a lot of time. Unity3D.com, learn, documentation. You're going to spend a lot of time in here because there's a lot of hidden things, like that method. Like the only way you know to do that is if you come in here like, how in the heck do I respond to a collision? And they'll say, oh, just add a method called ontriggerenter, and you're good. OK, great. Yeah. I believe it does, yes. But it's actually it's quick. I mean, you don't even know, right? OK, so ontriggerenter. So we have this collider. All right, so what we're going to say, we're going to say, hey, if the collider.gameObject.tag equals player, then we're going to destroy gameObject. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What? What'd you just say? OK, let me explain. So the collider, that's what we're running into. OK? So the collider has a game object. This is the object colliding with the collider. So if that tag equals player, then we're going to destroy game object. Now this game object is the game object that this script is going to be attached to, which is the chest. So we're going to destroy the chest. But what about this part? How do we know this? Well, we got to tell it. So let's go back to our game in Unity. And I'm going to select our person here, our little first person. Now right here in the top right-hand corner, we have what's called a tag. You'll use this concept a lot building games. Now there are a couple standard tags in Unity: respawn, finish, editor only, main camera, player, game controller. Player, right there. You can create your own tags, which you will, but for our purposes, we're going to use the player tag. Now we know whenever this player runs into this collider, that tag, we're going to know the tag. It's going to be tagged player. So we know, OK, we're a player. We ran into this. Let's destroy. We're not quite done yet, though. All we did was write the script. Now what we want to do is we want to apply the script to the treasure box. Well, that's very difficult to do. So let me just go ahead and do it for you. Done. All you have to do, click, drag, drop. You have applied the script. OK? So now, if I coded everything up right, and the demo gods are with me, boop, there we go, right? OK, that's cool. That's cool. That was not very difficult. But you notice I had to make the boop sound myself. And I don't expect people playing my game to go boop every time they pick something up. So I need a sound. I need something that gives me that validation that I got something. You know, like, oh, did I get that? Let me go back and look for it. Oh, where'd it go? Did I get it? Right? We don't want that experience. We want to know, yeah, we got that. So we want to play a sound clip when that treasure chest is picked up. So let's go back to our script. So we know we got to pick up a sound clip. So let's go ahead and add a property of type audio clip. And we'll call it pick up clip. And then in here, we'll just say audio source dot play clip at point. We'll use our pickup clip. And then the position. This is important. Transform.position. Now, in Unity, sound depends on space, spatial sound, essentially. So imagine you have this great scene, and you have a waterfall in that scene. Okay? And this is the waterfall. Our screen is the waterfall. So when my character walks up to it, and it's walking this way, and the waterfall's on the right, the sound is coming from the right speakers in my 7.1 surround sound, because that's how I play games, right? And if my character turns around, now the sound comes out of the left-hand speakers. And as the character gets further away from the sound, it gets quieter. As you get closer, it gets louder, right? So we want to say that we're going to play this sound at the location of the chest. So the transform, this is the property off the object the script's attached to, and the position of it, right? So where this chest is, play that sound. Because you don't want to bing and then have it coming off in your right-hand speakers. You're like, what the heck did I do? Right? OK. So now let's go to our treasure box. We're going to select it. Let's collapse this. Now we can see in our chest pickup, we have a new property, pickup clip. All I'm going to do, I already have a sound. I already took the time, scoured the internet, looking for the perfect sound. I do not think you'll be disappointed. Here we go. Beautiful. I'm validated. I got points, right? Any questions so far? Sorry, I forgot about the mic thing.
Do I really need a mic? I just want to ask the destroy bit that you said, destroy game object. Game object is actual player?
No, game object is the chest.
Right, and the collider is the player?
Yes, the object colliding, the game object right here, colliding with the collider is the player. We're tagged it. So if we go back to and select our player, we tagged it player right here. And then our script on the collider itself, remember that bots collider we added? That's this collider. We're going to say, what's the game object that ran into me? Oh, you're the player. Gotcha. So let's go ahead and destroy the chest.
The game object's like this.
Yes, this. Well, almost. We don't want to say this specifically because that's the actual script, right? That's the chest pickup script itself. That's the script object. This is the game object the script's attached to. Right? OK. Let's close that. Actually, we're done with that.
I don't know, something like this.
Sorry. So if like we have box and the car collide and let's say player collide, so would it handle?
Yeah, you just tell it. You just gotta.
But like tag only one, or?
Well, it depends on your scenario. You can tag them all the same. You can say everything's a player. Bad guy, good guy, doesn't matter. It's a player. Or you can say bad guys are enemies, and this guy over here, he's player, and you'll just code if right here, if player or bad guy. Right? You would check before you destroy.
Yeah, but tag is related to the person colliding, right? So I thought like...
To the object colliding.
Yeah.
You can tag any object. Any object can have a tag. So anything that's tagged, anything, like you can say enemy, player, or enemy, or super bad guy, whatever.
All right.
Or bullet, that's another one. When you shoot things, if there's a bullet colliding with me, then I'm going to die, right? Kind of thing. OK. So we have a treasure chest. We have some sound. That's cool. What else? Well, I think I want more than one treasure chest, personally. I mean, you know, you can't just have one. So when you're thinking about, you know what, I'm going to make more than this, your first instinct is just to select, copy, paste. You move it, right? Copy, paste. You move it. And let's say you copy a whole bunch of these objects. Let's say you have 100 of them, whatever. And then you realize, oh, man, you know what? I really wish this was a little bigger. So I'm just going to make that bigger. Oh, crap, I have 99 more of these I have to go and make bigger. That's going to really suck. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to make it easy on ourselves, right? So there's another concept that you'll use all the time, and we've been using, you just may not have noticed. It's what's called a prefab. So essentially, we're going to make a template out of that treasure chest. Okay, so I created a new folder called prefabs. And all I'm going to do, oh, what's this? Go ahead and delete that. I'm going to take this treasure box. I'm going to click and drag it into my prefabs folder. It is now a template, just like that. Right? So what's that mean? That means now when I come in here and copy and paste this bad boy, let me just move it over to the side. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'll move this one out to the side. All right, now let's say I want to make a change. I want to make these all bigger, okay? And there's 1,000 of them. Well, now we have a new option in our inspector under prefab. Select, revert, apply. So I make my changes, and now I'm just going to go ahead and apply them, boom, to all of them automatically, right? So whenever I update the template, everything else I can apply to directly. Awesome. Time saver. You'll use that all the time. Yeah, that's the standard. So if we come in, like for example, standard assets, we'll go like, let's go down to environment, water. See, everything's prefabs. That's the convention. All right, so now what's cool about that is even though I've copied and pasted and all that stuff, because it's a prefab, they all work the same. And anytime I update that script or add functionality or do anything to that prefab, everything else gets it. Now, I know the question in your mind, but Brian, I don't want to be copying and pasting 100,000 of those. I'd rather just programmatically create them and kind of have them just appear and spawn them. You can do that. It's just code. You'll just write either a particle system or a spawner, right? Because actually, I don't know if you noticed, but if we come up to a tag, respawn, right? I mean, spawn is a concept that's used a lot in games, so you will programmatically create these, but you will use the prefab when you create the object. That way, any change you make to the prefab, everything gets it, even when you're dynamically creating them. Okay, so we have our treasure chest. We have some cool music that's motivating us. We're picking them up. We need to keep score. We need a score, so let's do score. Okay, so tracking scores, fun and challenging to say the least. You really have to kind of think outside the box, like, okay, how in the heck am I going to keep track of score or stats or whatever it's going to be across the game? Well, one approach is to use what's called a game controller. So we're going to go ahead and create an empty game object. And I'm going to call it game controller. And this is such a common approach, it has a built-in tag called game controller. Right? So we tagged it, game controller. Great. So this empty object, it's not a physical object that's in your scene that you can see. It's more of a, think of it as like a singleton. Right? You have this object that's in your app, and you're going to access state off of it. You can kind of think of it like that. So I have this object I've added to my game, and I'm going to use it to track state. Perfect. OK, so I'm going to add another script, and I'm going to call it player stats. because I need to track information about our player, basically how many points we're getting. So let's go ahead and open this. Let's see, we will not be using update at all. We probably won't even start, but we'll start here. OK. So I'm going to go with a score. And then we need a public void update score into value. Should work. And then all we're going to do is say score plus equals value. Simple. OK. Now, once we have that, we're going to say that this game controller is going to be responsible for maintaining player stats. So we're going to take this player stats, and we're going to drag it on to our game controller. And we can see we have our score property here, just like we set, right? Set at 0. OK. Well, now that we have this object that's going to maintain this state, how in the heck do we access this in our other scripts? Like, we got to think about this. OK, so what's happening is I'm going to collide with the chest. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to play a sound. It's going to be destroyed. That's probably where I want to add 1 or add whatever to my score. So that means I'm in the chest pickup script. I'm here now. So I need to, in here, we need to update the score before we destroy the object, right? This is where we're at now. It's like, OK, how do we get to that? Well, because we're using that game object, right, we can access anything from that now. So let me just put something here. Let's say I got player stats. So we need the object. And I'm going to say var controller game object dot get find object with tag. And what did we tag it? Game controller. We got the game controller. We had the controller. Awesome. So now I can say stats equals controller. Whoops, not constant force. Controller dot get component of t. Now, remember, everything's a component, but it's really a script, right? They call it component. We want the player stats script, or component, if you will. Perfect. We have the stats. So what that means is I can come in here and go update score, and we'll add 1. OK. Make sure everything looks good. OK, let's go ahead and go pick up some scripts. And let's watch this score property as I pick up these chests. Woo, it worked. Perfect. OK. Any questions there? Did that look confusing? Do I need to clarify just one more time? OK, one more time. So what we did is we created a game controller, which is an object that exists in our game, but it's not a physical object. It's just a state manager, if you will. OK? We wrote a script that keeps track of player stats. It's like person equals new person in an application. Right? So we just created an instance of that. We put an instance of that player stats script on that state manager, that game controller. Okay? Now, that means we needed to access that information from the chest pickup script. So instead of calling, like in an application that you write, if you had some type of state manager, it would probably be a static method call, like state manager dot player stats dot score equals. Right? Well, we don't do that here. Instead, we get that state manager or that game controller using GameObject.find GameObject with tag, and it's tagged game controller. So if we go back to Unity, there's our game controller tag that we tagged it. Okay. So now that we have the controller, now we can get the player stats object off of it using get component. That gives us access to that player stats information. And then we just call the update score method that we added to the player stats here to just add to it every time. Okay?
What if you have two game controls?
2 game controllers? Well, you'll have to do a little extra work. Let's go back here. There is a find objects with tab, which will return a collection. Right? So if you have more than 1 game controller, you'll have to figure out which one you care about. But you can get them all with this find objects with tag, which will bring back in a collection. OK. So now we have score. We're keeping track of this information as we pick up our chests. Now we have to display this information to our player, right? The person playing the game. Like, yeah, it's great we have a property, but we need to expose that. We need something like a heads-up display with radars and bullets and health and all that crazy stuff, right? Well, we don't have time for the crazy one, so we're going to create a very simple one. So we're going to go ahead, create a 3D object, and we're going to add UI object. Sorry, we're going to create a UI object, and we're going to add text. Now, when I added this text, notice that it's automatically surrounded by a canvas. And right now, you don't even see it. You're like, Brian, what are you talking about? I didn't see you add anything. Well, let me do my little F trick. So I'm going to select the canvas, scroll my mouse over, hit F. Now I'm going to zoom out, and I can see my canvas now. OK, that's the canvas. So now if I select the text within that, you can see that it's down at the very bottom. That means if I look at the very bottom, oh, I can kind of see something here now. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move that. Ah, there we go. Right, and we'll make that 0. How about 24? And we'll call it good for now. OK, so essentially when you add the UI object, it creates this canvas, and it has its own little camera, and it basically sticks it right on top of your game. Right? It just imposes it right on top like a layer. This is how you create, I mean, you can create anything you want. There's some very complex heads-up displays you can write. And you can download them free from the asset store, radars and all that crazy stuff. But this is essentially what you do. This is a simple version of it. So now we got to think, OK, I'm going to update the score. I got to update this text. Where am I updating the score? Well, I'm updating the score in my player stat script here. OK. So that means we need to add another property. First, we're going to go using Unity engine.ui because we want a text object. Now we can say toString. Perfect. That looked easy. Well, it is. So let's go to our game controller. We're going to see a new property, score text. All we have to do is I'm going to take the text object I want to update, click, drag, assign. Now when we play our game, boop, 1, there we go. Boop, 2, 3. Perfect. Easy, right? Any questions? No?
Are all the actions, like, is it tracked in Unity? I mean, what if you want to go back like 10 steps? Because there's a lot of mucking around with sounds and creating the scenes and everything.
Control Z.
It keeps going back?
Yeah, it goes back. So you can undo, like I can go ahead and hit Control Z, and it will undo that text assignment. Whoops. But Control Z is your friend. OK. So let's see, I got 6 minutes. We can do, I'm going to let you guys choose. We can talk real briefly about deployment, or we can do another level and load that level when we win the game. What do you guys want to do? Deployment? OK, let's do deployment. So we win. OK, game over. Let's talk about deployment. First, we want to go to build settings. Now, scenes in build. This is important. You're going to want to add all the scenes you want included in your game in this dialog. You can click and drag them in or just add them one at a time as they're open. So I've added the main scene. Now here's all the platforms we can target. I'm on a Windows machine, so I'm going to go ahead and select Windows and go switch platform. Boom. I'm now going to deploy to a Windows Store app. I want it to be a universal. I want Direct3D, local machine, and for debugging, C# projects. Now, here's a gotcha. Windows Store only. The moment you change and you switch this platform, you must come up to this menu, Mobile Input, and disable that. If you do not do that, your keyboard will not work. And you'll say, why isn't this working? Oh my God, it was working just a minute ago. What'd I do? And you're going to go through all your scripts, you're going to rewrite your game, and you're not going to know. You might even switch back to a different platform and then it's going to work. But if you're on Windows Store, make sure you disable mobile input, or unless you expect to be hooked up to a phone or a controller. OK, so once you disable that, then you can go to player settings. Now, player settings, this is just basically your app manifest information, right? Setting your icon, your capabilities, your resolutions and stuff. This is your app manifest. Now, I'm going to say this is one time only. So you'll come in here, you'll do all your settings, set your icons, any type of resolution stuff, right? Splash images, any of your capabilities. You'll select all these. We're going to go ahead and hit build. We're going to go ahead and add a new folder. I'll call it build. We'll select that. We'll let this run because this is going to restore NuGet packages, and we know how slow that can be. Oh, wow, that was actually quite quick. But this takes a while. What's this doing? It's now building up Visual Studio solutions. So we're going to be able to open this game in Visual Studio, hit F5, and debug it. So that's what's going on right now. It's taking all our assets, bundling it all up, doing everything, all the magic, and it's going to spit out a Visual Studio solution for us. And it's going to take all this information and set it in our app manifest. So when I say this is one way, what I mean is when it creates that Visual Studio solution and we open it up, if we go make changes to the app manifest manually, and then we decide, oh, I need to come back into Unity and make some changes, and I publish again, it will not overwrite anything. Okay? Once you publish this one time, these settings, it's one way. It will not happen again. So you don't have to worry about losing any customizations you made inside Visual Studio. Okay? Which is nice. But it can be confusing if you're depending. Because at first, when I was getting started, it was like I was updating this. This was my source. This is what I was using. And I'd make a change, deploy. It's like, man, it's not updating. What the heck? So it took me a while to figure out it only does it once. Yep. You sure can, because design time designing it is not the same as deploying it. And also what's cool is, so for Windows Store, it's creating Visual Studio solution. For Android, it's going to create the Android solution. For iOS, it's going to do what the Xcode project, right? So depending on the platform, it's going to create the project for that target. Even for iOS, it will create the project on a Windows machine. Of course, you can't open it and compile it and all that stuff, but it will actually create the project files for you. Excuse me. Yeah. And then what's different about the other platforms, too, is you see this build and run. That doesn't work with Windows. But for iOS and Android, you can just, if you're on a Mac or something, you can hit build and run. It will do all this and run it automatically. But for Windows, it won't work. You have to go through Visual Studio. You have to build. Actually, we're running out of time. This is taking longer than I was hoping it would take. So let me close this. And then I think I have, yeah, this demo right here. I'll just kind of show you right quick, because it's basically time's up. So the first thing you'll have to do, because this isn't obvious either, is this is going to default to ARM. And that's not going to work. You'll build, and you're going to get build failures. You're like, what's going on? Oh, I'm pissing me off, right? Just change your platform here to x86, and then build, and then it will work. But this is essentially what you'll get when this completes. And then so you have your app.cs, you have your package.x manifest. You essentially build it, deploy it locally, and then let's see, right there. And then when you run the app, because we're using the personal edition, we're going to get a splash screen. This is personal edition. If you want to pay money, that goes away, and you can create your own splash screen. And then this little 4 GB machine is struggling to process all this. And then here's our game. Right? You see here the water, everything works. Right? Where's my score? Oh, there it is. This was a really quick thing I did last night just to make sure it would work. Yeah, and then you win, right? But that's my time. I'm actually 1 minute over. Sorry. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. I'm going to be here, so feel free to ask more questions as I pack up and head out. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.